The first shell hit the edge of the orbital station and sent a tremor through the command deck. Lights flickered. A few ceiling panels gave up and fell. No alarm sounded anymore. They'd been screaming for hours and had died raspily one by one, like tired old men. The war had reached its final, stupid crescendo. Daniel Dorsey sat on a bench outside the now empty infirmary, holding a cracked tablet in one hand and a half-eaten protein bar in the other. His knuckles were bleeding. Not from any glorious act of bravery. He'd punched a bulkhead 3 hours ago after watching an entire refugee ship get vaporized on the station's long-range cameras. It hadn't changed anything. He didn't expect it to. The war between the Frolic's Dominion and the Oltari Compact had started for reasons that no one remembered clearly. Resources, insult, miscommunication, it didn't matter. What mattered was that 2 alien superpowers had turned a chunk of the galaxy into a burning junkyard, and humans, as usual, had settled somewhere inconveniently in the middle. Daniel hadn't been a diplomat. He'd been a logistics officer for interstellar habitat maintenance. Then his station got stuck on a neutral trade route when the fighting closed in. Then all the diplomats died. Then the command handovers stopped. Then he just stayed because someone had to. The deck doors hissed open. A figure limped through, tall, 6-limbed, with a dull green exoskin marred by soot and old plasma burns. Commander Vec of the Oltari. Daniel didn't stand. He didn't need to. Vec didn't come here for that. You are still here, Vec said, voice like a rusting engine. Daniel looked up from the tablet. Wanted to see how the station ends. It ends soon, Vec said. The Frolics are preparing a final strike. Daniel took a bite of the protein bar. Of course they are. Vec tilted its head. You do not seem anxious. I'm exhausted. The alien took 3 slow steps forward and sat awkwardly on a crate across from him. It had learned this human gesture a week ago. You have been speaking with their negotiator. Yeah. If you can call screaming and threats speaking. It was your idea to contact them. No one else tried, Daniel said. Your side was too busy recalibrating torpedoes and their side was busy targeting escape pods. Vec's limbs twitched its version of a shrug. What did you say to them? Daniel rubbed his eyes. I asked for a ceasefire. I told them there were kids in the hydroponic sector. You know what he said? He said collateral is an acceptable cost, like he was ordering lunch. And yet you continue, Vec said. Because if I don't, who will? Vec was silent for a long moment. Then, the Frolic's negotiator Gerak demanded your presence on their flagship, personally. Daniel blinked. What? You, not me, not a diplomat, you. Daniel stood slowly, knees popping. Vec, that's a suicide run. Their fleet's still hot. Vec rose too. I offered to accompany you. He refused. Daniel stared at the ceiling. Another distant explosion rocked the walls. Give me 20 minutes. The shuttle smelled like burnt plastic and fear. Daniel piloted it himself because no one else could. The few techs left on the station had either fled or died fixing life support. He landed lopsided on the Frolic's flagship and stumbled down the ramp with a hand on his ribs. The jump had bruised something. 2 Frolic's guards flanked him in silence. Their heads were flat and triangular with eyes that looked like polished stone. They didn't speak. He didn't ask. Gerak's chamber was shaped like an inverted bowl and buzzed with low energy. Lights pulsed violet and red across the walls. Gerak stood in the center, surrounded by a ring of floating drones. You are the human, Gerak said. Daniel nodded. Daniel Dorsey, logistics officer. You are not a diplomat. Neither are you, apparently, Daniel said. Gerak's drones shifted. You mock me. I'm just tired, Daniel replied. You called me here, talk. Gerak circled once. You have contacted me 7 times in 3 days. You plead for peace. You offer nothing. Why do you persist? Daniel exhaled slowly. Because I'm not interested in watching 2 massive civilizations throw away 1,000 years of progress because someone misread a sensor ping. Gerak's nostrils flared. We were attacked. And the Oltari say you fired first. Sound familiar? Daniel pointed upward. The station you're about to blow up. It's got one medbay, 6 kids, 400 refugees, no weapons, no value, just people. War has costs. Daniel stepped forward. I've heard that line enough, so let me ask you something. Jarak's drone spun tighter. Daniel raised his voice. Are you done yet? The room went still. Jarak didn't move for 10 full seconds. Then, what? You heard me, Daniel said. Are you done yet? Jarak tilted his head. Explain, no more speeches. No more posturing, just answer. Are you done killing? Are you done firing at hospitals? Are you done pretending this is about justice? Are you done, or should I go back and tell the kids they've got maybe 10 minutes left? Silence. Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't flinch. His ribs ached. His mouth was dry. Jarak stared at him, unmoving. Then very slowly the drones powered down one by one. The lights dimmed. I will consider your words, Jarak said. Daniel nodded. Good. The return flight nearly killed him. A navigation glitch threw the shuttle into a spin that knocked him out cold for 30 seconds. He woke up with blood in his mouth and a cracked collarbone. The medics on the station, what was left of them, ran scans and confirmed it. You won't be using that arm for 6 weeks, said Gina Garvey, the station's last nurse. Better than not needing it at all, Daniel muttered. Vec visited him that night in the medbay. The alien stood beside the cot watching him breathe. You asked him, Vec said. That question. Daniel coughed. Yeah, I did. And he listened. For now. Vec paused. No one else thought to ask. Guess not. Vec nodded slowly. You are strange. Daniel closed his eyes. You have no idea. 3 days later, the Frolic's fleet pulled back. The Oltari didn't pursue. A week after that, both sides sent new negotiators. Daniel watched the first handshake from a wheelchair, arm in a sling, ice pack on his ribs. Gina stood behind him, arms crossed. You think it'll last? She asked. No, Daniel said. But maybe it'll hold long enough for the next guy to ask that question again. Gina leaned down. You really think that's all it took? Daniel looked at the screen. Sometimes people just need to be asked if they're done being stupid, she chuckled. And if they say no, Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the monitor. Peace, tentative and awkward, was settling like dust after a storm. For now, it was enough. And for a man who'd once just fixed air filters, that was more than he'd ever expected. The first time Daniel tried to stand, his legs folded like wet cardboard. Gina caught him before his face met the floor. You're not impressing anyone, she said, guiding him back to the cot with her shoulder. I need to stretch, he muttered, wincing as he sat. You need to not rupture your spleen. Again. You say that like it's a hobby. You say everything like it's not my problem. She handed him a clear pouch filled with lukewarm nutrient fluid. It tasted like sadness and old gum. He drank it anyway. Outside the medbay, the station buzzed with a strange energy. Not relief. More like disbelief dressed up as hope. Word had spread quietly, shakily, that the fleets had disengaged, that maybe, just maybe, no one was going to blow them all to vapor this week. Daniel hated how much that unsettled him. He wasn't used to the quiet, not this kind. By the following morning, he could hobble to the observation deck with a cane. The cane had been fashioned from 2 broom handles and a piece of pipe insulation by a 9-year-old named Lessa. She'd handed it to him like a knight bestowing a sword. He used it grudgingly. The deck overlooked Docking Arm C, which now housed a battered Oltari shuttle and a skeletal Frolic's envoy craft. Neither had weapons active. That was the part that made his stomach twist the most. Is that yours? Someone asked behind him. He glanced back. The speaker was Oltari, but smaller than Vec, with a dull violet pigment and a pair of ceremonial spines flattened tight against its back. It carried a data slate and a faint smell of copper. No, Daniel said. It's Lessa's. I'm just borrowing it. The alien blinked slowly. You are the human who asked the question. That's me. I am Inar, diplomatic aide to Commander Vec. I am here to observe your methods. My what? Inar took a seat on the bench opposite him, folding its limbs with the awkward grace of someone unused to furniture. You negotiated a ceasefire by asking an unquantifiable question. It defies standard protocol. Vec believes it was effective. Daniel leaned the cane against the railing. You want me to teach you how to improvise? I want to understand the flaw in our models. He laughed, then regretted it. His ribs protested like rusted hinges. It's not a flaw. It's just that nobody plans for someone to try honesty. Inar tapped its slate. That is not a common tactic. Exactly. The door behind them hissed open. Another figure entered, taller, with a segmented exosuit that shimmered faintly in the station's recycled light. Daniel's posture stiffened before he recognized the gate. Gerak, he said, didn't expect you to drop by. The Frolic's negotiator stopped a few paces away. His guard stayed outside. That alone said more than any speech. I was told you were recovering. Not fast enough, Daniel said. But I'm vertical. You should not be. Daniel gestured to the bench. You here to revoke the truce or just remind me I'm breakable? Gerak sat, his joints clicking faintly. I do not understand you. That's mutual. You insulted me in my own chamber. I asked a question, you answered it. We're still here. Gerak's compound eyes focused on the window. Do you know how many humans we've encountered before this war? Some, not many. Fewer than 50, he paused. Most were soldiers, traders, or corpses. Daniel looked at Inar, comforting. Gerak leaned forward. You are different. You did not posture, you did not threaten, you did not beg. You asked a question no military doctrine had prepared us for. Because I didn't care about winning. Yet you succeeded. Daniel exhaled. You think I planned that, did you not? He shook his head. I was angry. Exhausted, scared, I said the first thing that made sense in a room full of posturing. Gerak was quiet for a moment, then stood. We have reviewed your station's records. The damage is extensive, resource shortages, failing infrastructure. Your survival rates are statistically improbable. We do our best. I do not understand how. Daniel leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. You ever fix a water recycler with chewing gum and a prayer? I do not chew. That's your first problem. Gerak turned toward the door. I will return. Looking forward to it, Daniel said after he left. Inar tilted its head. He came to measure you, I got that much. He is recalibrating his understanding of humans. Daniel looked out the viewport. Let him, we're good at being miscalculated. 2 days passed. The station's systems limped toward stability. Vec coordinated with the engineering team to reroute coolant through what remained of the lower decks. The Oltari's understanding of human duct tape was growing at an alarming rate. Daniel returned to his post near the command core where the cracked consoles still flickered with partial telemetry. He didn't bother fixing them. No one had ordered him to. That in itself made him uneasy. Vec arrived during a maintenance shift, ducking beneath a sparking conduit. You are healing, Vec said slowly. Gerak has asked for a joint audience. Daniel frowned. Where? Here in 3 hours. He rubbed his temple. That soon? It is preferable to delay. No. It's just unusual for people to want to talk before lunch. The meeting took place in what used to be the cafeteria, now stripped of tables and adorned with a single long bench cobbled from storage crates. The lighting was uneven. One overhead panel buzzed like a dying insect. Gerak arrived first, alone again. Vec followed, flanked by 2 aides. Daniel stood across from them, arms folded, cane forgotten by the wall. Gerak began. We propose a neutral zone. For what? Daniel asked. Continued observation of human behavior. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You want to study us, strategically, Vec added, and philosophically. Daniel sat down slowly. You think asking a question is a tactic? Gerak nodded. Your species adapts through unpredictability. We were unprepared for that. You want to build a lab, Daniel said. A cultural exchange facility, Vec corrected, on this station. Adjacent to it, Gerak said. We will assist in repairs, provide resources. Daniel looked between them. You're serious. We do not jest, Vec said. Daniel leaned back. And what do you want in return? Gerak's answer came without hesitation. Access to people, to your failures. Daniel blinked. Explain, you survive what should kill you, we wish to know how. Vec added, not physically, sociologically, you persist through dissonance, disunity. Chaos, Daniel rubbed his jaw, you're asking to learn from our screw-ups. Yes, Jarek said. He laughed. You know what that means, right? You're going to hear a lot of bad ideas, some worse than others. We're not tidy. We are aware. Vec produced a small data chip. Draft proposal. Reviewed by both fleets. Daniel took it. You want me to sign this? We want you to decide if it's worth signing. He studied the chip. You expect me to represent humanity? Jarek gave a slow nod. You already have. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked around the makeshift chamber, at the walls still scorched from a fire 2 weeks old, at the floor stains no one had the time to clean. He thought about Les's cane, about Gina's exhausted sarcasm, about the air filters held together by glue and stubbornness. You'll need to build bigger chairs, he said finally. Vec inclined his head. We anticipated that. Jarek stood. We will return in 2 days. After they left, Daniel sat alone with the chip in his hand. The cafeteria light buzzed above him like a question waiting to be answered. The proposal chip sat untouched on the console for over 6 hours. Daniel had read it once, twice, technically, if skimming the attachment titles counted, and spent the rest of the time staring at the power flicker in the overhead light, wondering if the station's main generator would finally give up before he did. At some point, Gina limped in with a portable bone scanner and a half-eaten plum. She scanned his shoulder without comment, handed him the fruit, and left. He didn't ask where she found a plum. That felt like a question with too many implications. By the following morning, the main corridor outside command smelled faintly of solder and boiled mushrooms. The Oltari engineers had started sealing bulkhead fractures with a resin compound that off-gassed something pungent and vaguely edible. One of the human techs had already tried tasting it. He was now banned from the maintenance deck. Daniel shuffled down the corridor at a slow pace, cane in one hand, chip in the other. He passed 3 Oltari officers coordinating repairs via a series of blinking wristbands, none of whom looked up. That was progress in its own strange way. He found Vec in what used to be the gym, now a temporary command liaison center, complete with a mismatched array of chairs, projection units, and an auto brew machine that hissed with boiling resentment every 12 minutes. Vec was bent over a console, adjusting the station's external sensor grid. Daniel knocked once on the metal frame. I read it. Vec didn't look up. And you're asking for a lot. There is also much offered. Daniel leaned against a reinforced bench. You're not just proposing a research outpost, you're proposing a joint command structure, cross-species staffing. Rotational leadership, that's not observation, that's integration. Vec straightened, the movement deliberate. The war has shown us much. Our models were insufficient, our assumptions flawed. If we cannot adapt, we repeat. You think humans are the answer to that? No. But you are a variable we failed to account for. That makes you valuable. Daniel turned the chip over in his hand, and if I say no, then we return to separate paths, separate failures. He didn't answer. The auto brew hissed again. Daniel stared at it, then walked over, retrieved a steaming cup, and took a sip without checking what it was. The taste was somewhere between licorice and regret. I want to modify one clause, he said, setting the cup down. Vec tilted its head. No human personnel can be drafted into service without voluntary consent. No exceptions. Vec tapped a control panel. Agreed. Daniel blinked. That was fast. You are not the only species with lawyers. He placed the chip on the table. Then we have a deal. 2 hours later, Daniel stood in the former shuttle bay, now converted into a makeshift signing chamber. Someone had hung a tarp with a faded Interstellar Habitat Maintenance logo behind the speaker's podium. The podium itself was a repurposed food storage crate with a mounted comm unit. Arak arrived first, wearing a long, formal wrap in layered slate gray bands, each marked with sigils Daniel couldn't decipher. Vec followed, flanked by a single aide holding a ceremonial torch that occasionally sparked in what Daniel hoped was a symbolic way. The room filled with a quiet crowd, Oltari engineers, a few Frolix technicians, and the remaining human staff who hadn't collapsed from exhaustion. Gina stood near the back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Daniel stepped forward when prompted. No one clapped, that felt appropriate. "I'm not a diplomat," he began. "We've established that. I'm not trained for this. I definitely didn't plan for it. But I was the only one standing when it mattered, and someone had to ask the question." He paused. No one interrupted. "So here we are, not because we figured it all out, not because we suddenly like each other, but because we're tired. Tired of burning, tired of explaining loss, tired of pretending that this is what progress looks like." He turned toward Vec and Jarak. "You asked to learn from us, fine, but don't just watch the best parts. Watch the mess, the arguments, the duct tape, the fact that we keep going anyway." "That's the part you missed." Vec extended a hand, not a gesture of custom but one of mutual recognition. Daniel took it. Jarak followed, placing his hand atop theirs. The torch flared once, then extinguished. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was full. Later that evening, Daniel sat in the hydroponics chamber, watching the filtered light ripple through the algae tanks. Lessa sat beside him, swinging her feet above the floor. "They said you made the war stop," she said. "No," Daniel replied. "I just asked if they were done. Are they, for now?" She reached into her jacket and pulled out a wrapped ration. "You want my dessert? No thanks. It's not bad. Tastes like lemon if you pretend hard enough." He chuckled softly. "You should keep it." She unwrapped it anyway and broke it in half, handing him the larger piece. "You think they'll stay?" she asked. He looked out at the rows of sprouting plants, at the faint hum of the new filtration unit donated by the Frolic's envoy, at the Oltari technician carefully adjusting the light spectrum above a bed of mushrooms. "Yeah," he said. "I think they might." That night, Daniel returned to the medbay for his final scan. His collarbone had knitted enough to remove the sling. Gina checked the readings, sighed once, and tossed the results onto a nearby tray. "You're medically cleared," she said. "Mostly. I'll take it. You going to stick around?" he shrugged. "Station's half mine now, apparently." She wiped her hands on a towel that used to be a shirt. "Just don't start giving speeches every time the comm system works. No promises." He turned to leave, then paused. "Hey, Gina," she looked up. "Thanks for not letting me die." She nodded once. "You're not that easy to kill." As he stepped into the corridor, he passed an Oltari child chasing a Frolix drone down the hall. The drone emitted a low tone of what might have been confusion. The child laughed and ran faster. Daniel smiled. Not because it was fixed, not because it was perfect, but because it was, for the first time in a long while, enough. And for someone who'd only meant to fix air filters, that was more than he'd ever hoped for.